and different colours. And there we are. The players have kicked off, and we are seeing the c-pawn move 2 squares forward, which is a tribute to us. I'm going to take it. It's called the English opening. Yay!
Yeah, the English opening. And how will Wei react to this? Okay, the black knight comes out. White gets ready to fianchetto his bishop on the g2 square. Very flexible, and we might be transposing into some kind of Catalan opening. Here we go. Black's set up this kind of Queen's Gambit declined structure. Black structure in the centre of the board, rock solid. And what will Levon Aronian do here? If White castles his king, and if Black does the same, then big question, do you go into the Catalan, or do you play this kind of really flexible system where you just guard your pawn, getting ready to fianchetto the other bishop now? I like it, but it's very ambitious, provocative by White.
And there's a big question for Wei now. You know, what plan is he going to be adopting? Because there are several possibilities. You know, he can step forward with his d-pawn, 1 square, grab lots of space. He can also put another pawn on the 5th row, put his c-pawn 2 squares forward, or alternatively, he can just simply try to develop the dark light-squared bishop. So I'm kind of curious. I've heard kind of that the critical move is actually to expand in the centre, grab the space. But is that in fashion?
It's not massively in fashion these days. Normally, when Black sets up like this, Black's happy to be very solid. Wei, he is quite an ambitious player, so I wouldn't be surprised to see Black try and gain some space to try and expand as much as possible with those black pawns. But yeah, I mean, the fact that he's even thinking right now Wei means he's probably going to go towards a more solid option. There we go. Just copying White, getting ready to put Black's light square bishop on a nice square. Meanwhile, the White bishops in this type of position do offer quite a lot of long-term potential. Yeah, I mean, it's just a nice, quiet start to the game, really.
Yeah.
Simon, what do you think of this choice?
Yeah, I used to play this when I first started out playing chess, this system as White. I gave up quickly because I really didn't enjoy it, actually, because it is very slow, positional, safe, and manoeuvring. And I think we can see that that's, I think, quite a clever tactic from Aronian against someone like Wei Yi. He's got much more experience, the age, the playing, more games. So I think he wants to, you know, not go into something too quickly, not get something incredibly sharp, but more of a slow pace manoeuvring game where he can use that experience to maybe get some positional advantages. So I think that's his strategy from the opening he's played, and it makes a lot of sense to me just to develop quietly and wait for the action to occur later on in the game.
Yeah, White just steps a pawn forward there, getting ready to kind of create a nice square for the queen. The White queen normally sits on the square that White pawn used to sit on the e2 square. And as Simon said, lots of manoeuvring ahead. He's settling in for the long grind here, Aronian. And Wei Yi already thinking a little bit. Normally he's quite fast in the opening. Yeah, maybe it's because he's uncomfortable, or maybe he just didn't expect this type of approach from Levon. Levon's secret to success so far in this tournament has been being quite direct, playing very quickly on the clock, which we're seeing in this game as well, but also going for quite direct plans, or at least provoking the opponent. Maybe quite rare openings. This one is more common, but also just a slower type of position.
So playing as fast as Levon has been doing over the last few days, is that a sign of him being very well prepared? He spent some time all day prepared. He knows what he wants to play, or is it, as we always talk about, you know, his intuition just being on point?
Yeah, I think it's a mix of both. Levon's been playing a lot of what we call systems, where you can just kind of play your first 10 moves on autopilot. You know exactly what you're going to do, irrespective, no matter what your opponent does. So in a way, you can kind of do that with White here as well. You can just put the White queen on the e2 square, bring the White knight out from the left side of the board, centralize the White rooks, and then you start thinking. So although this is a quieter type of position, I mean, we've just seen move 8 from White. I could definitely envisage a situation where we're at move 15 and Levon still has the same time on the clock, just because his next few moves are quite straightforward. It's up to Black to initiate, to maybe fight back in the centre. So, yeah, decent choice of opening. And your other point there, Kaya, just instinct. Levon's instincts have been great. He's calculated when he needs to calculate. He stops for 2 or 3 minutes here and there. But in general, instinctively just playing the moves as quickly as he can.
It's a sign of confidence as well, isn't it? I mean, when you're playing quickly, it's generally a good sign that you're in form. I think a lot of players like this, you know, if you're playing a bit stuttery, you're slowing down, it means you're not confident. And, well, we see Wei Yi playing one of the more critical options there. But I think this just shows that Aronian is in top form. And it's clear that he is on great form during this tournament, hence why he's probably the favourite of this match. But I guess, Jovanka, we've sort of seen this kind of setup a fair few times, haven't we?
Yeah, we have seen it hundreds of times. Again, moving the queen to the square, maybe not the most popular, but still, you know, hundreds of games have been played. And Wei Yi continuing with a very natural plan of development. And Levon Aronian, with that rook move, is getting ready to instigate some action in the centre. The one thing I really like about Wei Yi is that, OK, here it is how much tea he drinks. Yeah. And he does it in such a civilised way as well. You know, whenever there's a decision to be made, cheers. He drinks a sip.
It's China and England, the big tea countries.
Yeah, and India as well.
India as well,
yeah.
big on tea. And Brazil as well, I think, is big on tea.
Isn't it? Maybe
it's just the rest of the world that is just off. You know.
Actually, I think the most popular drink in the world is tea.
Is it?
Yeah.
It is more popular
because I
than
thought
coffee.
I was being super healthy and being super kind to the world, but no. There's a lot of...
More popular than beer?
It can't be.
Than water?
Surely. Surely not. Water? Yeah, water's pretty...
Well,
pretty,
tea takes water, so I guess water is out of...
Yeah.
Yeah, well, I thought, anyway, the tea plantations are not great when it comes to their environmental record.
Ooh.
And then I thought, oh, OK, now I need to make a special effort there. But, OK, we see our players getting ready for critical moment. And Wei Yi plays a slightly unusual move. Again, only been played 10 times. And it's actually to put the queen on this particular square. It's much more natural to step it up one square, connecting the rooks. But, OK, here we have a change.
Yeah, and this is quite a common idea in a very similar position where instead of White's queen coming out, White's rook coming across, if White's queenside knight, the knight on the left side of the board, had developed instead, then this is actually Black's most trendy move, putting the queen on this square. The idea is that the queen won't get hit. Black's rook simply wants to slide across to the square where the black queen previously sat. And also, the fact that the black queen and the light-squared bishop are lined up together means that often the black light-squared bishop's actually going to move to the a6 square. And, yeah, I mean, this is a very common idea, maybe not in this exact position, but Wei Yi's just trying to use pattern recognition to kind of realise, OK, he's been surprised. Now there is maximum tension in the centre, and Black is decently prepared for this, I think. We will see a trade of one set of pawns, most likely right now. Yeah, it's a really interesting choice by Aronian.
Have you noticed something weird about one of their cameras? Anyone see what's going on in the background? It seems to be, I reckon, Wei Yi's got some ghosts in the house.
What?
The light is flickering, it's going on and off. So have you seen it? It's gone a bit bright, goes a bit dark.
Really?
Could be that mood lighting again. I think so, unless I'm just seeing things, which is entirely possible.
Slightly darker there.
Yeah, that mood lighting is the
yeah,
theme, isn't it? So it's like we keep an eye on it, see if it's sort of.
Wouldn't that be so annoying though, if like his light is flickering and he's trying to concentrate on the game?
Yeah, a bit of strobe lighting can't be good. No, so yeah, but because we saw that, of course, with Duda as well. I mean, when he had a good position, his room seemed to light up for some bizarre reason. So
when he was losing, it was pitch black.
Pitch black as well. It was weird.
Darkness.
So,
Maybe it was Mother Nature, you know, kind of giving her verdict on the position.
Casper the friendly ghost. Yeah, so.
Could be a friendly ghost.
Yeah.
And
Goddess of chess just signalling, like, I do not approve of that move. You will not have any more light.
Play more ambitious. Play more ambitious.
it would be quite cool, actually, to have something so the players could know how they're doing, just an indicator.
Some sound effects, maybe.
No, maybe just like a little bit red. You know,
not allowed, unfortunately.
Because I've heard that by looking at the bar, you can sort of easily guess if that was a good or a bad move. Well, because the bar tells you, but the bar or any kind of indicator would be of huge help to the players.
Exactly. Without the evaluation bar, we would be guessing a lot of the time. When we see the evaluation bar swing and make a big, significant jump, that's when we know there has been a blunder or mistake. That's when we know that one side has a specific tactic.
And
that works well
then
for
you
them.
know what kind of move to look for.
Exactly.
Right? The next move you should play.
I mean, often the players, they'll have a very good move and they'll be looking at it, but they don't know whether it's a good one or not. They'll see, oh, it's really tempting, but I have to calculate 10 moves. Do I really want to spend that time calculating? And they won't go for it. If they see the evaluation bar go really in their favour, they'll say, OK, I don't even need to calculate. I'm going to play that move.
It must be that move.
It must be that move.
It's basically like someone saying, you've got a tactic here. It's the same thing. You have a good move. You know, like literally someone saying, here it is. So it would be a major advantage. And I think it's been proposed that that's a variant of chess that could be played online even. That, you know, they're allowed to look at the evaluation bar like 2 times or something. Could be an interesting way to sort of spice up some.
If it's
chess.
equal, both sides.
But the way that I was thinking, it wouldn't be to kind of suddenly turn red or suddenly to turn blue. I was thinking, you know, have a bit more like in a quiet position would be like a gradually phasing to the red, like. And then suddenly maybe it will turn blue, maybe turn green, or maybe green and blue, green and red. I like those colours better. And then, you know, would that person feel panicked if they were like, oh, my goodness me, my position is actually getting worse and worse. And then suddenly it's green again. And then you're like, oh, what's happening? Just want to see.
Well, I think the light's gone off again here, hasn't it? Is that right? But anyway, probably should look at the moves. But I mean, I'm more interested in the lighting. That's just how bizarre.
You're like in what's the English word?
Electrician.
Yeah, electrician.
Yeah, electrician.
You've been
Simon.
following a lot of the lighting for these players.
Yeah,
Simon.
probably more than the moves. It's a bit worrying, isn't it? Maybe I'm just born to be an electrician.
Oh, maybe you are.
So,
There's worse things to be.
yeah,
And,
very good job.
yeah. Meanwhile, only one move, and that is black keeping the tension, moving the rook across. Yeah, these 4 pawns in the centre, it's as if neither side really wants to touch them yet. Neither side wants to give way and make that exchange, make that trade. I'm expecting either Levon Aronian now to capture one of the pawns in the centre or for white's knight. That's kind of idle knight to come out into the game. Yeah, it's so hard. I mean, if you do capture a pawn, which one do you capture? Maybe we can jump in and show why this is a bit of a dilemma for both players. OK, we don't have to show these pawn exchanges. They will happen eventually. First, Levon just gets ready by bringing his remaining knight out.
The pawns are kind of interesting. They're like forming a cross, like don't enter this position.
Yeah, I have an expression for this. Whenever I prepare a position like this in my chess notes, I write maximum tension. It's a standoff, and you know, because there's so many captures, as David highlighted, and of course, I feel that Levon Aronian has actually got the better chances here because the Black Queen feels slightly uncomfortable.
I agree. I mean, it's just the queen, isn't it, really? I mean, like, with David showing that the rook can come there, I mean, that must be a bit of advantage, David, do you think, for white?
Definitely. Black would love to do something now, something concrete. I think the big question is whether you can capture one of these pawns, either this pawn or the pawn next to it. If you take this guy, the big question for white is which way are you going to recapture? Do you play with pawns and hope, for example, that you get this type of situation? We call these hanging pawns because they're kind of hanging in the centre, in midair. They have to be supported by pieces. They can't support each other. And the problem is it's not immediately easy to push this one forward. That square would be covered. And likewise, you don't really want to push this one forward because you lose control over squares. So they kind of hang in the centre of the board forever. They do kind of restrict the black pieces, but your white pieces are tied down, defending them for a long time. But if we go back, if black does capture a pawn, the question for white is, do you take with pieces? Do you play with pieces instead of pawns in the centre of the board? And here, for example, if we see another exchange, most likely white would start playing with pieces in the middle. And this type of situation, does white have an advantage? It's completely symmetrical now, the pawn structure. The reason I would slightly prefer white, it's not much, but again, it's because, as you guys say, black's queen is sat on a vulnerable square. The big question for me here is whether black can just trade off a bunch of pieces, maybe give a check with the queen, everything disappearing. For example, we could even see the queens come off in a situation like this, and maybe white has a small advantage because these two pieces are pretty decent. There's also a hole in black's position. This is quite a common theme, the knight jumping in, but it's very reduced material right now, and this one could fizzle out to a draw if black is accurate. But it's not Wei Yi style. If we retreat the whole way back to the current position, it's not necessarily Wei Yi style to trade a set of pawns, try and trade off all the pieces like we saw in that last variation. The question is for black, what else?
Spending a lot of time, isn't he? I mean, this is why I think another reason Aronian's opening choice is very clever. I mean, it shouldn't really lead to a tangible advantage, but I think that Wei Yi is uncomfortable just because of the time he spent. He spent half of his time already. I think he prefers more clear-cut positions where there's clear-cut sort of tactical things to do. So playing this kind of very cagey setup where there's multiple choices, I think his experience, is going to be a little bit lacking. And, well, we see there that Aronian does take with a pawn in the centre, which maybe is more demanding on Black's position.
Yeah, definitely. And whilst the players are taking a pause and thinking about what to do next, well, of course, it's the final. It's going to be maximum drama, so much excitement. And we love it when you at home get involved in all the action. So we would definitely love to see your selfies. Remember to take them in landscape mode. And the Black Queen steps forward. But to kick us all off, John Brazel sends us a selfie. He says, "Hey, chess fam, another beautiful day to enjoy the outdoors and the road to Miami." And Abhishek also sends us a very cool picture. He says, "When my opponent plays a stupid move, and also this deer at Longleat didn't like what I offered. Sorry, dear. Oh, dear."
I went to Longleat a while back, about 6 months ago, because they got a safari there, and it was the worst trip ever. Because you go around in your car. It takes about an hour and a half, and as soon as I got in, I realised I needed to go to the toilet.
Oh no!
And it was like, and you're in the lion enclosure, and you have to, and there's cars in front of you, so you can't go around them, and it's literally an hour and a half of oh my God, can I get out here? No, there's a lion.
Oh no!
What about here behind the bush? Tiger. And it's like, oh no, rhino. It was very painful trip.
Did you go in the monkey enclosure?
What, to have a wee? Or,
No, I meant
okay.
did you drive in it? Because I've had that's the most fun. Because the lions, I'll be honest with you, they might be ferocious beasts, but they're lazy. They do nothing but just hang around in the sun. Meanwhile, if you go drive in the monkey part, they're on you, on top of your car, playing with the windscreen.
They are. They jump all over it, they pull off the things. Yeah, it's not actually that much fun. I watch it on TV, safer. or have a toilet on board. That's my tip for Longleat.
Yeah.
But I guess you still prefer white here, David, do you, slightly?
Slightly. I always find it really difficult to play white's position. I've had something very similar to this, if not identical, and the tension in the centre is really unpleasant for white. If you're kind of impatient, like I am occasionally. Here, white's pieces look great. They look like they protect each other. They're controlling some central squares, at least pointed towards the centre. The question is, what next? You can't really push your central pawns forward with white. You don't want to trade any more pawns. You just need to manoeuvre pieces. And I guess it's similar for black, but black can just kind of relax and sit back and say, OK, the pressure's on you. You have more pawns in the centre as white. You have more responsibility. I mean, if we just jump into the position once more, I'm struggling to find a productive move with white. This is the tension. We never, ever want to trade this pawn now as white. OK, Levon moves his bishop. We never want to trade this because suddenly white has two isolated pawns on the queen side, and long term that will come back to bite him. And likewise, we can't push forward in the centre. This square is simply covered too many times. But Levon wants to push forward in the centre, hence his last move, moving the bishop to this diagonal. And now maybe a threat. If black's pawn pushes forward, the white pawn can step forward in the centre. And now, OK, bishop takes rook is on offer. I'm not 100% sure this is actually what white wants to do, because suddenly white has won the exchange, a rook for bishop, but white's light squares are extremely weak around his king side. And I could imagine a situation where this bishop comes open onto the diagonal and wreaks havoc. So
I don't really understand Lev's last move. I mean, it's maybe a clever move, but it's a move I never would play in my life. So I'm very intrigued, to see if, will he now try to win the exchange? I mean, incredibly risky to get rid of your bishop, your fianchetto bishop around your king, right?
I don't think he can try this anymore. Unfortunately, Wei Yi has just pinned this pawn. So if the white pawn steps forward, black can even play, for example, knight takes pawn. This knight is poisoned because of the pin. White's queen would drop to the black bishop. And Levon, hence has to wait. He just moves his knight across, putting some pressure maybe on this square. Levon's just really, really begging Wei Yi to capture in the centre, so that finally, at least, OK, he has these hanging pawns, but at least suddenly there's no more tension. At least he can kind of play around these pawns in the current situation, it's all about the tension here, and it's a bit uncomfortable for both sides.
Yeah.
I must admit, I also am a bit baffled by Levon Aronian's plans, and it kind of goes against my understanding of the position as well. I've always just thought you just sit, black waits, white waits, and OK here. But actually, Wei Yi has stepped back with the queen, and this is a great move because the queen gets... Oh, hang on a second. Is there a reason why it's not? I was loving this move because
why would
the queen...
it be a great move, Ivanka? It's on a bad square, no?
Yeah, the reason I liked it is because the queen gets out of the eye line of the rook, and for me, I always feel very uncomfortable.
OK, so at least a safe square.
Yeah.
And this is the big question. Does white have a strong move now? I'm looking, is it this? I mean, this one, does this work now? I guess black's knight can still capture in the centre, utilising the fact that this is a pin, so white's pawn cannot take this knight. For example, pawn takes knight, the white queen would just drop off. What else? If white can't push this pawn, then what else can you try? Levon Aronian.
Oh, I was wondering about this. He's getting ready to, well, I say sacrifice, but it might not even be a sacrifice, capture that pawn, right? But that's a big decision as well.
Out of the blue, it's out of nowhere.
Is this ambitious play by Levon Aronian?
Definitely.
Very.
Yeah. Nice.
Yeah, and the whole idea, Simon says, is, for example, normally when an opponent's knight lands in your half of the board, you want to kick it back. If black does try to kick this knight out of his half, then knight takes pawn. And you mentioned it's not a sacrifice, Simon. I mean, firstly, it's a check. At the very minimum, you can just capture the black rook. Maybe you don't even do this. Maybe you just step forward with the pawn, try to open up this bishop's line towards the black king. But even if you were to capture this rook, for example, you now have two central pawns and a rook for black's two minor pieces. So a small material advantage for white.
Yeah.
Yeah, big threat.
I think, again, that is showing what good form Aronian is on, because he's spotting these moves which are not obvious immediately, you know, just really, really quickly. And that just indicates he's really on the top of his game. Because a move like that, OK, you're kind of a bit committed. It's a little bit strange to put the knight there unless you're going to sacrifice it. And, well, it's going to be very interesting now because... how do you stop that move that David pointed out? The knight coming in and grabbing that pawn and starting a big attack as well. That would
also Wei Yi down to 4 minutes, so he's nearly 6 minutes down on the clock compared to Aronian. I don't see a good way to stop this. Maybe we can check the Stockfish suggestions, because how narrow is black's path to survival? The evaluation bar says white is only slightly better, but if you step wrong, you might be significantly worse. And, OK, he doesn't play any of the top three moves there. Black's best moves were, for example, shuffling the rook across, maybe going to this square with the rook to guard this pawn. That would have been maybe more logical. But now, he's moved this rook anyway.
This is just begging to be, like, some sacrifice here. I mean, what do you capture on e6 with? I mean, the knight, I think knight takes is definitely the move level play, because you can win material by capturing that pawn with the bishop, I feel. But after quite a forced sequence, you're going to come out basically a pawn up. But you've given up your very strong minor pieces at the end of this. So I think he will grab it with a knight and make it a pure sacrifice, and do a similar thing to what you said, David. Start pushing those pawns in the middle. I don't know which one. B5, E4 coming next, and look at those pawns in the centre. Look at those bishops. This looks. I'd love to be white in this position. This is like a lovely, lovely structure to have.
I have to say, I love this position as well, but I think I would be tempted to grab material and try to get the same.
What, take with the bishop on e6?
Yeah, and try to get the same kind of pawns. I know.
Oh, I couldn't do it. I just couldn't do it. I'd much rather be points down than points up, obviously. That's probably the wrong thing, but maybe it's a good move. Maybe it's a matter of taste here. Well, I can't actually see what Stockfish says, my bad vision.
The computer's with you, Simon. The computer wants to just give up a knight for 2 pawns, just to show that final position one more time. After a few captures, the black king moves, and white steps forward. Oh, he hasn't done any of those moves. He's played the second top Stockfish moves.
Okay.
I was going to say it's a matter of taste, because in this position, Ivanka preferred to take with the bishop, and that was the third top computer move. So, a matter of taste there. Levon doesn't want to commit. Instead, he just captures a pawn, opening up this central line. Computer still likes this for white, but much less than it did the sacrifice.
it's kind of a pity to give up your centre, which was so nice in the last position, but the sacrifice is still there in the middle of the board, and you have opened up your other bishop. So if you look at White's bishops, they are fantastic, crisscrossing across the board like that. Lovely little pattern there. X marks the spot of doom, and it might be that square around there where it's actually going to happen as well. So
around here,
yeah, definitely.
Where the X meets.
Yeah.
This is when chess becomes mathematics, right?
Yeah, a little bit.
those-
Yeah, just I think it is that vision in chess. You know, you have to see the potential of the pieces, and this is maybe a simple way to demonstrate that, right?
Really nice. I've never even thought of that pattern before, but it just happens to be coincidence that maybe the danger would happen on one of these squares where the bishop's eye lines are pointed at. Meanwhile, Wei Yi did try to swap a set of rooks, and Levon is thinking, which way is he going to recapture? It's check right now, so he will take either with his rook or with his queen.
That would be a cool thing to investigate a little bit. In many games where you have two bishops crossing each other, how often will the place they cross each other be the crucial spot?
Ah.
We could have found something there.
Yeah.
Yeah, let's copyright it. Get the
Possible chord.
Yeah, you got it. How did you get it? Just about to say that. You know, my chessboard course 115.
Yes.
X marks the spot. Yes. Bring it on. So, yeah.
It's going to be named after you then, Simon.
Oh, you know.
Found something new in chess.
That'd be a cool name, Simon X.
Oh.
Like a
Yeah. It's all
rock
right.
star.
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, we were saying like there's no grandmaster just with a name of one letter. So maybe, maybe in the future. you know.
But do remember our Crypto Cup challenge, everyone. Go find a friend or film yourself naming as many grandmasters as you can in only 30 seconds and post your video of yourself or challenging your friends with a surprise on Twitter using the hashtag ChessChamps and Crypto Cup Challenge. We want to see them. We want to show them, you guys, attempting our challenge. Simon did 12 names, but he had to do the full names. You only have to do last names. That's enough.
So I kind of got double points there. You say 12, but as I said, both names, surely that's 24?
Yeah.
Actually, you got 13 if we can count.
26
people.
then.
Yeah, Dubo, of
Yeah,
course.
so-
Dubo counts
Yeah,
then.
so I reckon I'm more 25 mark, really.
Yeah.
Just you know.
It's good you're not bitter about it, Simon.
We're not at all. We're not competitive in the studio at all. Just make that clear.
And obviously, Wei should be one of your players. That's a short name to say. Wei.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Wei, you, ding. Like a-
Oh, look,
Yeah.
David. I know David's going to destroy it. I can just see it. I can see him just.
Do all the short names.
Yeah.
We'll find out tomorrow, won't we?
I'll probably freeze under the lights.
Yeah, remember it's an ongoing challenge.
Yeah.
So you can definitely challenge all your friends. We would love to share it during the breaks. And also, I can't wait to see how everyone does when you do it properly,
Yes.
which is like under pressure,
Yeah.
under the
That's why it's
spotlight.
maybe the coolest if you surprise a friend with it.
Yeah.
Because if you film yourself, which is completely allowed, but then you can do a little bit of preparation. But, I mean, we would like to see a world record in this challenge as well.
Ooh.
So prepare with
there
all the short names.
Well, 18 is the tops,
Yeah.
right? Although you...
So far.
Well, yeah, we'll
easy,
give time.
easy
Yeah.
to break, I think. So.
Okay.
Especially if you've got a list there. Some people could cheat, couldn't they? If they got a list,
Well,
you
yeah.
can't. But that's
But
not
there
the
is no
spirit of it.
cheating in the challenge.
That sounds like
You'll be able
cheating
to see
me.
if someone's reading it off a...
Yeah.
I'd like to see how Magnus gets on with that as well. That'd be interesting to see if he can get a lot of names. So, but yeah, and do we have a couple more moves? So
Only now. Yeah.
yeah. So I was wondering here, David. I mean, like, I don't think Black will take that pawn back, but if he does, is there a big blow? You know, if Black just goes pawn takes pawn, for example, does White have something nasty? Oh, he has taken it back. So this is the kind of position where you're now certainly looking for a sacrifice. I mean, or to bring another piece in. Because look at White's pieces, right? The bishops, the knight, the rook, the queen might have potential. They look very scary to me. But is there something here?
Valuation bar's really shot up again. So I think your instincts are correct, Simon. So instincts say there's something for White because all these pieces are kind of pointing towards the Black King. You have the open file. You have everything, basically. So what is the knockout?
Can you just threaten, checkmate? I mean, get the queen. Yeah, this move.
Ooh, nice.
We were talking about the crisscross. I was just looking at the knight. So if we can get rid of the knight, our queen dives in. Yeah. And every piece is attacking Black's king all of a sudden. Yeah. I mean, big threat now, yeah?
Big threat. For example, if Black does nothing, then bishop takes knight, as you say, removing the defender, and suddenly white's queen jumps in, teaming up with the knight, and the black king is doomed. Checkmate is coming in a few moves. So, yeah, huge threat. How do we guard against it? This is the current weakness. This pawn is defended by black's knight, but not for long. Wei Yi needs to find a way to keep it defended. You could do this in two ways. Both of them are really ugly, I've got to say. One, you could step this pawn forward just to block this bishop out, but this looks superficial. Wow, Wei Yi really plays with fire. I was going to say next you could push this pawn forward, but then you weaken this diagonal. Instead, wow, we've seen some real tactics. The pawn steps forward, hitting the white knight. Remember, Levon's idea was to remove the black knight, the defender, and Wei Yi says, OK, you've removed my knight. I know you're threatening to come in, but I can get rid of your piece, the supporting piece. So white's queen cannot dive in anymore. Clever defense, maybe.
Yeah, I think so.
Yeah. An important kind of motif of the counterattack. And now we see a trade of bishops. But there is a problem with black's position, and that is the double G pawn. I mean, I'm just looking at that G5 pawn. It's a little bit vulnerable, I have to say.
Yep, this one.
And when you combine that with the rook standing on an unchallenged open line, you feel that maybe black can be stretched in two directions.
Yeah, I think the question for white is whether you can get this knight into the attack, whether you can get your queen into the attack now. And this queen move, it does again hint. One bishop's gone, so there's no more crisscross, but it does hint at some sacrifices on this square. For example, again, if black waits, not sure how, but for example, there might be a nice sacrifice hitting the king and breaking through. So, OK, Wei Yi has to be on red alert in the current position. This is potentially a threat, and the secondary threat, like Jovanka said, is going for this pawn. So maybe just, maybe just stepping the queen forward, hitting this guy, and also potentially, if you step your queen forward, some pins along this diagonal. I think this might be the big threat, this queen move, actually.
It's very unpleasant for black still. I mean, I think Wei Yi did an OK job there of surviving the first storm, but the pressure is still on, and Lev playing fantastically at the moment, finding all these ways just to put pressure on Wei Yi. And you're right, that queen move looks really unpleasant, but also the sacrifice, both moves. And what about time situation? OK.
2 minutes for Wei Yi.
2 minutes now, so... It's
just under 4 minutes for Levon. And yeah, I mean, this bishop's offside. I wanted to retreat it just to line up, hit the queen, but the queen stepping forward. It's just disaster for black. This pawn is dropping. And this pin as well, really, really awkward to deal with.
The other pawn as well.
Yeah, exactly.
So
I mean, misery comes in threes.
Yeah.
Yeah, and OK, instead of that, black reacted by just shuffling the queen across, defending this square, so there's no sacrifices, but evaluation bar hates that move. Can white just still go for a pawn? I guess if you step forward with the queen now going for this guy, then at least you lose touch with this c4 pawn. So not 100% easy for Levon Aronian. I'd love to get this knight into the game.
Well, you could throw another piece into the game here as well. I mean, like, and create a threat, yeah.
Oh, he does it.
Oh.
You're right, Simon. Big threat. So, for example, again, if not sure how black does nothing. If black moves the knight, for example, then rook takes pawn suddenly, and a double attack, hitting the queen. But this is also check. You win.
Yeah, it's a lovely place for the rook, it seems. Anyway, right in the position. So black with his back against the wall at the moment.
Yeah, this piece also a bit loose.
I mean, this looks devastating. I mean, there has to be a defense. I mean, is it just simply to challenge that rook, step it forward?
Step black's rook forward. Maybe. That could be an antidote, an answer to this rook move. Suddenly, we don't really want to trade rooks, but here, for example, if white's queen avoids the trade, a queen trade is possible, potentially, but if we move, then we've got to be a bit careful that black doesn't counterattack on this diagonal, and Jovanka is right. This was black's reply, offering a rook trade now. OK, to take that or not to take that. You could retreat with white, but you lose a bit of momentum.
Yeah, and you just come from there, haven't you? So this is a good defensive move, definitely. I think Wei Yi is defending well. I mean, he could have easily gone wrong by this stage already, and he's holding on well at the moment in a tricky position.
Really tricky. I mean, one question is what happens if white steps back with the queen, saying, OK, I'm wanting to come up and check you and win the black queen. So a rook trade, if it happens, at least now with white, you're hitting this pawn. More importantly, you're hitting this black knight. Maybe the black knight just moves. Is this enough for white? Levon's got to ask himself this question right now. Trade rooks or no trade?
What is the main factor in Levon's position that makes you say he is much better in this game? What is the main factor?
It's just comparing all the pieces. So it's level pieces, almost symmetrical pawn structure, but white's rook, at least temporarily, is more active than the black rook. It's on an open line here. White's queen is much better than the black queen. It's nicely centralized. White's knight is slightly better than the black knight because it's got some pressure on this pawn. It's not clear whose bishop is better. Maybe white's temporarily because, again, some pressure on this square. The target is the black queen. So it's just all of these small things adding up. White's pieces are more active than the black counterparts. That's why Wei Yi, he's doing a great defensive job. He senses that Levon's pieces are more active, especially the rooks here. Clear imbalance. White's piece is far better. So in chess, if you know your opponent has a strong piece, try and trade it off. So good strategy. And Levon has allowed that. He did drop his queen back. We do see the trade of rooks, and black's knight under fire moves out the way. Difficult question now. Do we take the knight? If we take the knight, black has these kind of two sets of doubled pawns here.
Oh, very strange.
Like a weird, I don't know, box of doubled pawns.
Yeah.
But the problem for white, maybe, is that firstly, this pawn is attacked, but secondly, the light squares are so weak near his king. Got to be a bit careful here if he takes that knight off the board. The problem is, after this knight jump as well, you would love to win a pawn with white. You'd love to play queen takes pawn, for example. But here, at the very end, black can regain a pawn, and the position should just be a draw now.
Okay.
Maybe Wei Yi's defending. Maybe he needs to keep rooks on the board, Levon Aronian. Because in the current position, if we go back to it, the queen is attacked, and if she has to retreat, that's not good news. The attack is fizzling out with every exchange that's made.
So Levon needs to keep all these pieces on the board.
Ideally.
Advantage.
Yeah.
Okay.
It's not easy to achieve.
And, well, he's in a difficult choice, how to maintain the momentum. And you can see his clock is ticking down to just over a minute.
He's lower on the clock for the first time in the game.
Definitely. Yeah. And, OK, the heat is on.
Yeah. This is where we say, ding, ding, ding. Time trouble.
He's not playing in this tournament.
Yeah, I was going to say exactly the same. Beat me to it.
I need another word than ding, ding, ding.
Yeah.
What's a good word?
I like
Ring,
it.
ring, no.
Yeah.
We can use ding.
Yeah.
I'm sure he'd be honoured to have his name linked to such an important moment in the game.
Exactly, yeah.
Yeah. And, well, now the clock is down to 45 seconds.
Yeah.
And such a tough decision to make. I mean,
He's done such a good job of defending, hasn't he? I mean, very impressive, because it's a really tricky position. I mean, I don't know. I mean, David, what do you think about? OK, so this is, OK, and again, very quick move there, straight away. Is there any way that white can keep this game going?
White has to be very careful. If you leave the queens on the board, the white king could be weak on the light squares.
but wait 1 second. I mean, there is a capture that you can... OK, he's played it, and the whole idea that I'm thinking is after bishop takes pawn...
There's a check, yeah?
There's a check.
There's a check, yeah. Did he just miss this?
You just blunder a pawn.
I think
He did.
maybe Wei Yi just missed this
He
move.
literally, like, took a step. Well, not a step, but he kind of moved backwards
He did
and
so
kind of
well.
shake. And now we
shaking
see a
his
shake in
head.
his head.
Yeah.
He got a bit excited there and found a tactical shot that didn't quite work.
This often happens, doesn't it? You defend so well in a game, but then when you relax, it all goes wrong. And hang on a minute, this just looks phenomenal for white. Look at that pawn in the middle of the board. It's just a free, strong pawn. And black's king can't get near that pawn because all the squares are controlled. And I think the white king's just going to come and win.
Yeah.
Surely.
You guys are completely right. White's king, once it breaks open, it's slightly hard for the white king to approach the centre of the board. But if the white king can start approaching, kind of start travelling towards the left flank, then it's just game over. I think Wei Yi might just give this one up.
Oh.
This is a clever move, maybe, Day. I mean, only way to try and stop the king coming in, right?
The king is locked in. I mean, how is the white king going to break out?
This is what you need to do, right?
The only question remaining for Levon Aronian, get that white king out. Yeah, this last move was essential. If black was one move too slow and white had been able to push the f-pawn out the way, get the white king over, easy win for white.
But can Levon just push that pawn now?
Yeah, the problem is it will just get captured. If you push it one square, it gets taken, this white f-pawn. If you push it two squares, en passant, the black pawn takes it anyway. So how...
The en passant. That's what we beginners, we forget the en passant.
Yeah, the white f-pawn would love to move two squares forward and then game over.
Not just beginners. I mean, like, there's I know England #1, Mickey Adams, forgot it
Really?
a couple of times when he was playing. He's lost 2 games from forgetting about the en passant rule as well. So yeah.
Yeah, I wasn't aware of that actually.
Yeah, I think one against Neil McDonald, where he'd forgotten he lost to Neil McDonald quite a long time ago, and then I can't remember who the other one was, but I remember him or someone telling me. So yeah,
It's brutal.
yeah, brutal, yeah.
And meanwhile, we talked about the White King being trapped. The Black King is also stuck on the back rank. The problem for White is he would love to use the Knight. White's Knight would love to hop around, attack some pawns, or maybe kick away Black's Bishop from the cage it's created on the White King. But White's Knight, as soon as it moves, the Black King can come towards your far advanced pawn. OK, a bit of triangulation, we call, from Levon Aronian. White's King has just done a little triangle, but still not breaking out. Valuation bar says +1 for White, but what is the winning plan?
Yeah.
I don't see it.
And he plays your move, Kaya.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yay.
Gone for it.
Yeah.
En passant.
Has he forgotten about the en passant?
It's the only way to try it, isn't it? I think. This one.
Okay, so he is still trying Levon Aronian.
Still trying, but
Oh, that's nice.
he was 1 pawn up, but he gave that pawn back via en passant in order to try and get the White King out. But now the White King has to sit as a defender. The pawn in front of it is a passed pawn. Black's bishop.
Triple pawns.
Yeah, actually.
Oh, yeah.
You're right. Tripled F pawns.
Whoa.
But wait 1 second here. I just checked the evaluation because I was thinking something is a bit fishy. Black only has 1 way to draw this position. He has to stop the White Knight getting active. He has to stop it getting to the B3 square. So only the move Bishop D1 will draw.
Oh wow. Okay. And how long has he got? He's got. He's got a bit of time.
He's got
a bit
2
of time.
minutes,
Okay.
so he can get to the essence of the position.
He plays
And-
it.
Wow.
Plays this key move. If he'd moved the Black King, the White Knight would have stepped back to this square and stepped into the centre, putting pressure on the bishop, the pawn, and this pawn. And for example, here, I think White would be winning. You capture this pawn, and Harry would run through to become a queen. So, yeah, he spotted it. Very well played. Really narrow path to survival in this position, bringing the bishop to cover this square. Now, White's Knight can't really get active if you drop back to this square. I guess the Black King is just going to come and take your pawn. Still a bit tricky here. White's Knight could jump in, for example, with a check. It's really odd, this pawn structure. It's like Freddy is one of his triplets. OK, Levon Aronian, instead of allowing the Black King out, the Black King's still stuck on the edge of the board, covered by this Knight. He pushes a pawn, Levon Aronian. But now what happens if there's a capture? Is he going to ignore this pawn? No more tripled pawns on the F-file. But if you take this pawn with the White Knight, suddenly the Black King again
5 seconds.
getting active. He doesn't take this pawn, so Levon's just giving up all of his pawns. And he's just trying to say, OK, if you push your pawn forward now, yes, you have 3 really scary pawns, but the White Knight is going to get into the position and win this guy. And suddenly, again, he's going to try and use all of these black pawns as a distraction in order to get his Knight active.
But
It's really risky, though.
I was going to ask that. I mean, is he taking too much risk? I mean,
Yeah. What's Wei Yi's best move here? Oh, he gives up a pawn. He's about to promote, so this pawn is captured. But now, this is really clever from Wei Yi, at least in defensive terms, because now he got rid of this white H pawn. And Black is still temporarily a pawn up. Levon Aronian shaking his head meanwhile. Black has this extra pawn. Can you keep it, maybe, by pushing your pawn forward?
yeah, I was thinking that, or retreating the bishop. He has 1.5 minutes to figure out how to maintain that pawn. And I actually preferring Black's position here.
Problem is, how's Black ever going to win? Black's king is so bad. Levon Aronian, okay, again shaking his head. Yeah, I think in practical terms, White should still be okay, even if the evaluation bar says Black's to be preferred here. One thing White should not do, I'm guessing, is to capture Black's pawn in the centre of the board, because then after a trade of bishops and knights, I think it's going to be very risky for White. Even that is unclear. Maybe that's just a draw.
Could be a draw, can it?
16 seconds.
Does Levon Aronian take this Black central pawn? You have to calculate a king and pawn endgame there, and it's so hard to do with 10 seconds on the clock. He doesn't make that commitment. He moves his king. Makes sense as well.
Yeah.
Black's king's in a cage.
Can Black get a little bit fresh and give a check to the White King? try to entice the king to go into lands that he should not go. And no, Wei Yi just simply waits with the king. This is also good strategy. Just leave the position open and full of choices. And now 6 seconds,
He needs to just
3
get out of this game with
seconds,
the
2
draw, Levon.
seconds,
Yeah.
make a move, and it retreats the king.
He made that with 2 seconds on his clock. Yeah, he needs to just repeat the position somehow, just sit, wait, do nothing. And, OK, second time we've seen this position.
Can we get this now?
Yeah,
Yeah.
neither king can get active, really.
But I mean, I've seen Wei Yi, you know, in the other games, I reckon he's going to play on with black here. Well, I say that. Is it going to be a draw already? I mean, if there's any way you can play on, but probably there's not any way you can play on.
Levon with 3 seconds.
3, 2, 1.
gotta take the draw.
Okay.
He's gotta take
he
the
made
draw.
that with 1 second to spare.
I mean, he's playing with fire here, right? I mean, he really is. And Wei Yi can keep the game going, maybe by moving the king the other way and trying to bring it around that way. I mean, it should, of course, be a draw, but I think Lev should be happy with a draw at this point in the game, definitely. And he is. See, he's playing on. This is what he does, right? He plays on.
Did you see it was really sneaky? Wei Yi, he always stares at the board. He barely ever looks away. For 1 second, he just kind of looked to the right of his screen. He looked at the clocks. And then he decided to play for a win.
Yeah.
So,
Smart.
for the first time in the game, he's the one pressing and trying to play for the advantage.
Ooh.
Yeah, he's so calm, Wei Yi, even when he blundered earlier, or maybe not blundered, but when he was on the defensive. Yeah, he was just ice cold, barely flickered, and suddenly really focused Wei Yi. OK, do you touch one of the black pawns? If you touch the black pawns, you do leave a square or 2 for the white knight to jump into.
I thought black might be able to try bring his king to where the pawn on the light square is, possibly. But you're never going to move that king too far forwards because white's pawn is too strong. But I mean, of course, it should be a draw. But can you can you try to use those 2 pawns to go up and create some problems?
Black wants to win. You have to push the black F or G pawns, one of them.
I mean, a winning plan would be able to move Freddie 2 squares forwards with Gary defending it, but maybe we don't have a lot of time to show that. But yeah, as you say, he's got to use those pawns right, David.
It's about pushing these pawns if you want to win and trying to sneak the black king around. He's done it. He's going for it with 20 seconds left.
I know, and the players with seconds to spare, they are facing critical choices. And Levon pushes forward with his A pawn.
Can both players win, or is it Levon fighting for a draw? Wei Yi trying to win it?
I think they can both win, but it's yeah. I mean, especially if Wei Yi overpresses now, which he could do. It's just, but I think Wei Yi has the better chances. Definitely.
Is it kind of like a narrow path, easy to make mistakes as well?
Especially for white.
Okay.
I like what Levon's doing. He's getting his pawn ready for any potential race later on, just in case he can win the black A pawn. But for Wei Yi, the one difficult thing for him is keeping in touch with this pawn. On the last go and in the near future, OK, still now, he's able to stop this pawn. For example, if it steps forward, he can drop his king back. Suddenly the white knight is tied down. This pawn is going nowhere. But he has to be really careful where he puts the black king. And it's all about these pawns stepping forward. Levon just retreats with his king. And surely Wei Yi now, he's going to start initiating, pushing these pawns. It's not easy to push this one. That's the problem. If you push too far, then you just get captured. So, wow, Wei Yi, OK, he retreats the bishop instead. And he's going to try and go around with this piece. Still should be a draw because I think white's pawn is too strong. But let's see if Wei Yi can make progress. Both players under 20 seconds.
And Wei Yi repeating the position, probably just 2 times, trying to get more time on the clock so he can think about complications. And he goes for it. He's pushing the G pawn.
Big question is what next?
I mean, the only thing I could see if he pushes the F pawn and then the G pawn after a capture. But I mean, can he try that, David, or is that not working ever?
Yeah,
It's risky.
it does
as
come
well.
with a bit of risk. That's the problem for black.
Yeah.
Also, anytime we go down to a king and pawn game, pink king and pawn endgame, if the bishops and knights disappear, and I'm assuming all of the pawns on the right half disappear, white's strong pawn disappears. If we're just left with the A pawns now, I really like what Levon Aronian has done. White's pawn is so far up the board there, it will take black an age to capture it. Meanwhile, white's king can run towards the corner. So any king and pawn endgames now, where it's just the A pawns left, is going to be a draw. Yeah, I think unfortunately for Wei Yi, pushing any of those pawns is too risky right now.
And if you can't push the pawn, then I mean, where can that bishop go? The bishop can't actually go anywhere that's of any use at all. So this is definitely looking like a draw. But as we've seen before, Wei Yi doesn't like taking draws, does he? He likes 100 moves. Can he get there? I don't know how many moves are on there.
There's one idea that I potentially see is actually trying to get the bishop to the c6 square, so that the bishop perhaps will keep an eye on the pawn. And maybe this allows, in some situations, it's going to be a tall ask, I admit that, the black king can get active.
Yeah, I had no idea how the bishop could get there. That's the problem. I don't think it has a route, does it,
Well, if the white king takes a step back, then it can get to the d5 square and then get to the c6 square, and
that's what
basically we're just taking it move by move.
Oh, wow.
And
He's trying to force the issue.
It's certainly provoked a response from Levon Aronian, and this looks good enough, actually, to secure the draw. This is it.
This looks like it will secure the draw after knight takes pawn. Black's king has to go towards the white pawn, and here we go. We're headed towards an endgame where computer might say that it's +1 for white, but white's remaining pawn is just going to drop off, unfortunately. You can't really go and save that white pawn. OK, he's trying, but we will see a situation where the white knight and the black pawn on this side of the board just balance each other out. And, yeah, this one is no chance of progress for white.
It's quite a funny draw, actually. I mean, because white is a piece up, right?
Yeah, it's a weird one.
It's not, but the white knight can. The point is, the white knight can never move because black queens gets an extra queen. And if the white king tries to go towards that pawn, then white will lose his last pawn. Then it's at least a draw for black. So it's
It's like a maths equation, and you can just kind of rule out that white knight and that black pawn. They're just not part of the equation anymore. And here we go. Black's king will likely step back, and no way forward for white. If you go again towards that black a pawn to attack it, black's king slides the whole way back to defend. It's basically king and one versus king and one. The white knight and black pawn just cancel each other out completely.
I wonder if it's still a draw if black loses his a pawn. No. It's the answer, but
OK, white's knight can actually lose a move, as we say, just retreating, forcing black's king back every time. But here we go. I think Levon Aronian is ready to reconcile himself to a draw. It's impressive how calm Wei Yi was when he gave up his bishop to secure this draw.
Tough game, right? Good fighting game to get us started there. I mean,
high quality.
Very good, very good game. So,
Levon Aronian just debating. Is it about repeating the position right now?
Yeah.
Or offering a draw? Repeating.
You can basically do both. Nothing can go wrong at all for white here. So, OK, he just pushes his pawn forward. Slightly odd.
Another 50 moves.
Another 50 moves. OK, he's setting a small trap. If black's king comes into the centre of the board, the white knight might be able to check it, fork it, and win the black pawn.
So if you remove the g pawn now, would it still be a draw?
Well, that's a good question. If
Go for a stalemate.
G pawn didn't exist and you just park the black king in the corner, I think it would be a draw.
I think it's a draw, actually, if you take the g pawn off. But
instead, we see a repetition of the position and the first draw of the final.
They are still tied. One game into the final, the first match. Levon Aronian with the white pieces. He was fighting for a win in this one, but eventually, after 79 moves and 53 minutes,